must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military industrial complex.
Today we got Nancy Guberti. I think I said your last name right. I have a lot of Italian friends, so I figured I could probably pull it off. And she's a nutritionist and functional medicine specialist, which I'm not sure exactly what that entails, so I'll have to ask you about that. But interesting story how she went from working for Goldman Sachs to now, being a health and wellness specialist. So thanks, Nancy, for being with me on this snowy, what was it, Wednesday?
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So how did this all happen for listeners that aren't familiar with your story? How did you go from working for Goldman Sachs to now, obviously, your goal is researching foods and just a healthy lifestyle?
So I was working at my dream job because I was in brokerage for several years, and then I landed a position at Goldman Sachs, and I rose up the ranks pretty fast. I became a VP of fixed income and in e-commerce. And I would visit 150 institutional clients, and I traveled 3 to 4 days a week. And I absolutely love traveling, between Boston, San Fran, Chicago. And I had 2 kids, and my youngest one got very sick. So he had developed multiple food allergies and autoimmune disorders, as well as a liver issue. And he was letting the bile out of his body because his liver couldn't process it. So it was pretty serious. And I went to conventional doctors, and they had no answers. And they really just were like, okay, you have these medicines, this medicines. We can't really tell you where he's going to go in life because ammonia is going to his brain from the liver. So it was really a very dark time in my life, because if you have a child who's sick, you really, at least I couldn't find happiness in anything. And I went on this journey to find answers. And I would ask the doctors, but I don't understand. Isn't there something natural? Isn't there something that we could do? What about what he eats? And isn't that producing ammonia as well? And they would just basically look at me like, food has nothing to do with anything. There's nothing natural. It's this. And then we wait and see. And I could not take that. It just was killing me inside. I said, that's what this has come to. I'm putting his faith into these experts, and they don't have answers. I have to do a waiting game. So that, I was at crossroads in my life because, again, I had this really great career and I loved what I did. But I said to myself, when I'm in my 80s on my deathbed, or even older, hopefully, will I have been able to answer the question, did I try my best? Did I do everything I could to help my son? And I knew that I couldn't answer that with the word yes if I let everybody else just wait and see. So that's when I decided to go to school for chemistry, food chemistry, and nutrition. And now I don't have a science background at that point of my life. I really didn't like chemistry or biology. Dissecting frogs in high school was like disgusting. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a learning curve. And then I started to work with these PhDs, because it's the PhDs who are doing the research. And I found there was liver research going on in Spain, and I worked with them. I got my master's in nutrition and food chemistry, because everything we eat turns into a chemical. So I wanted to provide my son with foods that would not turn into ammonia, to try to lessen his liver overload. And then I learned all about natural supplements and then functional medicine. And you mentioned, what is functional medicine, right? So there's the conventional lab work like a CBC, which, insurance companies always, will cover an annual physical, and then you usually give blood, and that you would take what we call a complete blood count. So they check, they'll check your white cells, your red cells, they'll check your cholesterol and other things, and now they usually check your vitamin D. But that's only giving one aspect of the picture. Functional medicine, and there's an institute of functional medicine, those type of lab work will show you how is your body functioning. So for instance, there's an organic acid test, which is a first morning urine test. It's non-invasive, right? It will check over 74 markers. How is your stomach functioning? Your GI tract? Do you have candida or bacteria? Are you absorbing your foods? How's your mitochondrial and your Krebs cycle? So when you take food in, you have to break it down, right? That's called the Krebs cycle. Are you producing energy from the food? And are you feeding your mitochondrial, which is the powerhouse of the cell, right? That shows that. Then it shows your neurotransmitters, because, face it, we have a lot of stressed out people, adrenal fatigue, OCD, lots of different things going on, depression, mood regulation, anger management, irritability, and then focusing issues. So that checks your adrenal system and your neurotransmitters, like your serotonin, your dopamine. Then it goes further in checking, can you break down fats? Can you break down carbohydrates, right? How are your amino acids? Because that's the building blocks of protecting, the muscles protect the bones. And then it goes into nutritional markers, your B6, your B12, your pantothenic acid. What about your antioxidants, your vitamin C, your glutathione? These are the things that protect you against degenerative diseases and toxins. And then it also checks your liver pathway 1 and 2. How are you detoxing? So if you think about it, this is really how the body is functioning, where there are imbalances, where there are overgrowths, where there are deficiencies, and then from there you follow a customized regimen based with food and supplements, homeopathic, nutraceutical type of protocol.
Yeah.
So that's functional.
Yeah. Well, the homeopathic thing, it's funny how the medical field has changed, because at one time those were considered doctors. And now, I've done a lot of research into like the Rockefellers and how they influence medicine, and, the American Medical Association, and, all the links between that, and how like they basically didn't look at, it almost seems like a conspiracy it seems like a pretty open conspiracy to make sure that natural medicines weren't considered medicines, and weren't considered, it wasn't, any doctors that were working with that, focus on that was their specialty, weren't considered doctors. So there was this like line drawn, and a lot of it has to do with the money in pharmaceuticals. There's no money in a cure. There's no money. There's no money in healthy people. There's money in people being alive and sick, and basically that's, and you doing your research and doing all this, did you learn the same thing pretty quickly, that it seems like they're suppressing that type of information?
I thought that the brokerage industry had a lot of rules and regulations and conspiracies. And then when I thought, well, this is healthcare, and aren't we all supposed to be doing our work with the mission to make the other person healthy? And that's the goal. And I learned quickly that wasn't the goal. Lots of times nobody's thinking out of the box. No one's doing continuing education, and no one's working together. So, why can't a regular doctor, conventional medicine, work with an ND? Why can't they look at functional medicine tests? This is run by a lab. Why don't they want to learn this? And then through my own experience with my son, then later on, and fast forward, nothing short of a miracle, a lot of prayers and research, he is where he is today. But through that, I opened up a private practice in Greenwich, Connecticut. Now, I had brokerage firms saying, come back. Your son's okay now. Come back. And I was changed forever, because I was like, no, there's another side of health. And it's here, but it's not in mainstream media. So like shows like yours are so powerful because you're getting the word out. And through these years, I've been in practice for about 15 years now. I've met people with, I never advertised. So I met people through word of mouth, and they were like on their deathbed. They have been to conventional doctors for so many years, 4 or 5 years, not finding out any answers. And then we ran these other tests and we're like, but this is the issue. Let's try to get this in balance and see if this helps. Nobody has a crystal ball, including me. It's hard work, research, trial and error, which we call clinical, right? Medicine. And from that, we saw that there was a pattern. Inflammation starts in the stomach first. We all know it with exercise. AB is the core. But what happens with our health, what we're putting in our stomach, how it's absorbing, what's on our stomach lining? And then we look at all the other areas. So I've helped through this. And then designing a customized regimen, people with, so even things like uveitis, which is inflammation in the eye, where there are specialists in Massachusetts that charge like $5,000, take no insurance, then they have no idea if this child will get better. And then we do these tests and they follow a protocol. And they go to the doctor with the findings and say, here, would you like to know, you could run these tests. This is a great protocol. Would you like to share it amongst your client base? And the parents of the children that I have seen through the years are shocked when the doctors don't want to learn. They don't, because then the kid's going to get better. And where are they?
Yeah.
So that's what I've seen through the years, not just for uveitis. I've seen this for autism and ADD and depression and everything else. And even working with other doctors. Okay, if they want to stay on the conventional medicine, why not see how we could put in all this alternative nutraceutical regimen to help still balance them out? And very few of them through the years really want to work with you.
Yeah, well, it's funny how that works, because I have to growing up, I had to go to the doctors with my parents because they don't speak much English, and I would go to translate. And my buddy owned a supplement store, and he was really, he was a huge part of just changing my perspective on nutrition and just vitamins and all these natural remedies. And me growing up, just always questioning things a lot, and I just questioned the pharmaceutical companies, and I questioned, anything that's for profit. I figured there's probably some fuckery going around. There's something going on, that you can't just take everybody's word for it. And I would go and ask doctors about, my dad was on Lipitor, which is the most prescribed prescription drug in the world. It's amazing how much money they make off it, and he's been on it for a long time, and he's an occasional drinker. We're Portuguese, he makes wine, so he drinks wine every day. And I asked the doctor, I'm just like, hey, is there any health risks with the fact that he's been on Lipitor for years, and he does drink every day, not a lot, but he does consume alcohol every day. And he's like, oh, don't worry, the heart attack will kill him before the liver failure. And I'm just like, because I asked him, I'm like, I know Lipitor is really bad for your liver too, and that was another thing. So then I started asking about milk thistle, which is good for your liver. What's the thing that's good for cholesterol? The red yeast rice. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And all these other, and he knew absolutely nothing about it. It was amazing. He looked at me, he's like, no, he's like, I've read some things. He's like, I don't know anything about it. He's like, just stay on a Lipitor. I'm like, okay. So it seems like that's just a recurring trend of how little they know about natural remedies. And then because it's a dietary supplement, these things can't even state that they can cure or help anything. They have such restrictions.
Right. And it's really like, I've had lots of patients who are on that, and there's a product called Biolipitrol, right? And that's all natural, and it works wonderfully. And then even aged garlic works amazing for the high cholesterol. And, so I've had patients who say to me, okay, my doctor says I have to lose this much weight and my cholesterol has to get to this amount, otherwise they're putting me on meds. And they'll tell me, listen, I'm not changing my diet. I'm still going to eat this garbage. So just give me a nutraceutical regimen. So I'm like, all right, well, I'd love for you to change your diet along with it, but at least take this. And they go back and the cholesterol goes down because the supplements work. You have to just know what you're taking in. Like even for the red yeast, you have to make sure then you're having COQ10. You have to make sure there's that balance, right? So supplements, like medicine, could be dangerous too if we don't know the balance and if we don't know where our deficiencies are. But lots of times, even with high cholesterol, the individual cannot break down fats. So they have something, and I've seen this on the test results. There's a pattern, and they have something called fatty acid oxidation. So if you can't break down the fats, it's going to show up in your blood. So then that individual, wouldn't it be worth it to take lipase, a digestive enzyme that helps you break down the fats, so it's not being stored up in your blood? So there's so many different things if we look at it, and I wish the doctors would want to learn, well, how, and they're very smart in their own, way. If I need to get my appendix removed, I'm going to a doctor, right? But if I need to lower my cholesterol, I would change my diet and take these natural balance supplements. So everybody has a place. It's just great if we all work together, and that's not what's going on.
Well, yeah, because I've gotten in these conversations with some friends, and even my brother, and he'll say, well, if he's a doctor, he must know something. And I'm just like, well, he does know a lot about his field, but the thing is that he's kind of restricted on what he learns. He doesn't learn anything about what a nutritionist will research from, natural plants and all this stuff. And there's people like Dr. Gerson and all these other people that have been a part of, really shown people the link of what a healthy diet, how much that can improve your health and wellness. And I think that the problem is that they look at symptoms and then they give you a prescription for it, and they never get to the root of the symptom. I mean, even looking at the way somebody is unhealthy, their height and weight, I mean, that gives you 0% of the information. You have, somebody can be heavier and have more muscle, and somebody could be skinnier and have more fat and be unhealthy. I mean, I know plenty of very thin girls who are unhealthy. They don't eat good, they don't exercise, but they're thin. So if they go to the doctor says they look good and they're all set to go. And so body fat percentage, all these other things come into play. And so it just, it's a huge issue with that. And what do you think is the first, the biggest issue with today's obesity, obviously the obesity issue, what do you think is the biggest thing causing all this? What do you think is the biggest cause of just our lack of nutrition?
Well, first, no one is taught how to eat, right? So that's a big problem. I think when women are pregnant, they go to Lamaze class and they learn how to breathe during childbirth, right? I think they should learn then at that point. I mean, they should really learn before conception, but, so where would we do it? In college or high school or elementary school? It needs to be not just a health class, because what are they teaching in health class? We need to be conscious of what we're putting in our bodies. But at the least, if a woman were going through Lamaze class, wouldn't it be great to learn how to eat healthy? Because now she's not only responsible for herself, but a child, right? I know I would go into elementary schools and teach the kids, because I'm like, if the parents are too far gone and they're set in their ways, let's try to educate the kids and have the kids educate the parents. And I would then go to my kids' soccer practice, and the parents would come over and say, oh, you told my kid this and now they won't drink Gatorade anymore. I'm like, well, it does have a neurotoxin in it. Or, you told my kid Doritos has MSG, which kills their cells. I'm like, well, it's monosodium glutamate, aren't you interested in learning? So I think, to answer your question, the biggest issue we have is that people are putting food into them that they have no idea what it's from. And if they knew, they would find out that all of the processed foods are very addictive. So they have different natural flavoring, is addictive chemicals that they put in there. So it excites your taste buds. We call them excitotoxins. And now you have to have more and more and more. And they're empty in nutrients. They're not like chicken nuggets, don't even have chicken in it, so what happens? And people just go about and they're not conscious. So on Twitter and Facebook, I try to put so much information like, hey, did you know this was in this food and that was in that food? So if we look at any type of food that's not being homemade, it could be genetically modified. that's injected with a bacterium, right? So that's going to overload your liver, and now that's going to hold on to that into your fat cells, and then you become a toxic wasteland, right? And then you then go for sugar. I mean, sugar is in everything, and sugar, leads to obesity. So it's a problem that we're not eating balanced meals. We're not cooking anything from scratch. We go for fast. Everything is fast. Even when people want to lose weight, give me a pill or give me a shot, or let's do bariatric. Let me, do it fast. And I'm saying, well, how long did it take you to gain this 90 or 100 pounds? It's going to take you that long. But I always ask, aren't you worth it? Isn't your health worth it? Because if you say yes, then you're worth it. So there's a lot that goes on with the obesity, but the food is not helping us. And these food companies, even fast food, they are not thinking of us and our health in their best interest. They're looking for profits. Why all of a sudden are these food companies now adding, healthier versions of their food? Because they were losing a profit. They don't care if you have high cholesterol or heart disease. They just want to keep selling you something. So we have to really look at what are we eating, because it is addictive, it is fattening, and it provides no nutrients, right? And then I always say, why don't you ask yourself before you eat something, what is this going to do for me? Is it going to nourish my hair, my skin, my eyes? Or is it going to go to all my problem spots and make me tired, give me that peak of energy, and then crash? So it's just like a relationship with coworkers, family, friends, it's a relationship with food. What are you getting from this?
Well, you made some really good points, because one thing about teaching kids how to eat, you almost always see fat kids, fat parents, and it seems like they adopt their parents' eating habits. And it sucks, because it's like, I remember the street I grew up on, and there's this really nice couple, but they were really heavy, and their kids, I saw them at a young age, and they're heavy, and I'm like, they're going to keep that for the rest of their lives. And I see them 10, 15 years later as adults, and the kids are heavy, and they look just like their parents. And it's just because, like you said, nobody teaches kids how to eat, so they'll just eat what the parents buy. So if the parents have bad eating habits, then they have bad eating habits. And the other thing is, it's amazing where we cut corners to save money, and all these things, and food's always the one place we cut. Oh, we'll just go to Mickey D's, we'll go to where. And I'm just like, I've used this metaphor a few times. I always try to tell people, I'm like, listen, if I told you could only have one car in your whole life, one car, and if you put shitty gas in it, if you don't change the oil, if you don't do whatever, when that car starts falling apart, you still have to drive it, no matter how stressful it is that you can't get to where you need to go and stuff. I'm like, well, your body is that one car, and if you don't put good stuff in your car, eventually it's going to break down. It's not just going to last forever. And then that's when, unfortunately, it's going to kick you in the ass. I just think when you wake up every day, and, especially when you're young, and me getting to my early 30s, it's one of those things where, I'm 29, and just now everybody's always like, wait till you hit 30. And I'm just like, I can feel it now. I've played basketball my whole life. I've lifted weights, and now my joints hurt and all this stuff. And growing up, it was always like, I was always into sports nutrition and like pre-workout drinks and proteins, and now it's just like I spend all my money on vitamins, multivitamins, glucosamine for my joints, and milk thistle because I do a little bit of drinking, and all these things. So it was just it's amazing. I mean, I see people at a drive-thru at McDonald's with a brand new Mercedes, and I'm just like, you have to put 93, 94 octane in that car. You are putting better fuel in that car than you're putting in your body, and it's just like, it looks like food, it kind of smells like food, but it's not really food. I mean, you put they had that thing on online recently where they put the McDonald's hamburger on the sidewalk, and a month went by and animals didn't eat it, nothing, all this stuff, and it just looked exactly the same. They did the same thing with like a Walmart ice cream sandwich, and same thing at like an hour in the sun of like 9-degree weather, it just started melting. And it's just like, so what is this that we're eating? So, I mean, it's scary, and obviously being a mother, I'm sure because that's a big thing I'm having. That's why this podcast, actually, I was really interested in having it, because I actually have a kid on the way in February. Nice. And that's like one of those things where like you see a lot of the activists against GMOs, like Dennis Kucinich's wife, and all these people, they're mothers, because I think when you start when you have another life and you have to look over them, you start really being concerned about these things. And it seems like a lot of these activists for GMOs and nutritional eating or better eating and stuff like that are mothers. And do you think that was a big part of what motivated you?
Of course. Yeah. So, I always say to my husband, you're a great guy and everything, but, it's the moms, so I had started this. It was a biomedical group, a support group at a local hospital. And it was only mothers. We got up to 75 moms, and we would contact speakers. And this is before, the internet and Skype. So we were able to do it through the phone conferencing. And, we then would talk about this for hours. What do you think? How could we apply that to this and that? And it really is the driving force. I mean, because you'll see that even the pediatricians, they say the same thing of when a child should start on solids and even breast milk, if you can't do breast milk, then go for the baby formulas. And if you look at Infamil and all of those formulas, the first ingredient is corn solid syrups. And I'm like, really? Corn solid syrups? And what are we getting from that? I'll tell you, it's genetically modified. It doesn't say organic. It's an excitotoxin. There is no nutritional value there, right? So if a woman could not breastfeed, well then, and if she could breastfeed, she's got to eat so healthy, organic. And you mentioned about, people will spend on other things, but they won't spend on food. I always get the question is, but organic is so expensive. I'm like, really? Listen, don't get a manicure, don't get a pedicure, don't buy the latest outfit or whatever. It's all relative. Where can we spend the money? Spend it in the food, because that dirty list and the people that, like when Dr. Oz comes out and says, well, you could, and other doctors as well, where you could eat these that aren't organic, but these should be organic. That makes no sense, because the ones that they say aren't organic could be genetically modified seed. It's going to be grown in dirt with pesticides. That's totally toxic. Now imagine a mom has that when she's pregnant, then the fetus is getting this. And then imagine when she breastfeeds, you're transferring all those toxins. Do you have any idea if this kid could detoxify? No. Think about, you want to nourish the central nervous system and the brain. So you want to give that baby the purest of everything. And then we go into our meats. If the mom is having meats, it has to be free range. We don't want antibiotics in there. You're going to pass that through your breast milk. So like when I meet a person for the first time in the office or on Skype, because I have clients worldwide, I'll say, what was the last time you were on an antibiotic? And they may say, 5 years or whatever. Okay, let's look over, then we finally, it's like a 7-page intake. And then we finally get to the food, and they're having regular milk. Well, you're getting antibiotics in your milk. You're getting your antibiotics in your regular cheese, your regular ice cream, your regular butter, and your regular meat. So it's passed down. People think, no, it's not passed down. It is. There was a study that I recently put on social media, was that if an animal was bit by a tick that had Lyme, you could actually get it from eating that meat.
Oh, wow.
But yet you think that you're not going to get antibiotics or growth hormones from having that milk that is not organic?
Well, they say we're getting immune to, a lot of things because they're putting in the animals. And I think antibiotics, most of them go towards farms anyways, right? Is that true?
So, yeah, the antibiotics is really bad, that the government actually stepped in this year to say we have to monitor how many antibiotics they're giving to the animals, because people are becoming resistant. And we'll see that with children who are, say they have strep, or ear infections, and they get put on one antibiotic, and then it doesn't go away, so they get put on another antibiotic and another and another and another. And we see that with adults as well, because they're getting resistant because it's in their food. It's in everything that they're drinking and eating. So now they have to create this, like they call it the super bug and the super antibiotic, and it's getting out of hand So this was the first year the government put it into a plan to say, we have to monitor. Now, I don't think that's going to happen until 2016, but they see it as a problem. So all of this is creating a problem. The genetically modified is a whole nother nightmare. And, it's so funny because on Twitter, then you have the GMO people from these companies like Monsanto who then follow me and say, oh, no, genetically modified is only toxic to bugs, but not toxic to humans. I'm like, just like, you're like a gnat. Please go away. Because how could you say that? And I'm like, listen, organic is the only way that I will eat. Like, are you kidding me? Or I'll have someone saying that NutraSweet is okay, so you can have diet soda because this doctor said that. Well, who cares what that doctor said? It's toxic as well. So you have to really become your own health advocate. You really can't just say, okay, because this person said that, let me take it as the truth. No. Read about it, learn about it. We put so much into our careers, but then we don't want to read about our own health. And you're right. I mean, you're young, to me, you're very young. So, but as people get older, it's years and years of accumulation. So when I see young teenagers, I commend them. And I say, good for you that you're eating this way, because then their counterparts, their friends are eating poorly. And I said, well, they may not feel it now, but it will accumulate, and then your body cannot constantly push it out. So we have to be kind to our liver, our kidneys, even our skin. When people have eczema, nobody wants to say, well, what am I eating? Yeah. And we should.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's funny how I had the same issue with Dr. Brzezinski. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but I had him on my show, and I remember just announcing he was on my show, and all of a sudden I had all these people tweeting me, telling me that it was pseudoscience and it was bullshit. And I had my co-host was joining me for that show. And actually, my buddy who owned the supplement store, he ended up looking into him, and he became a huge fan. So he wanted to be on the show when he was on. And my co-host Dave, he was kind of skeptical about him. I'm like, oh, this is the doctor that's going to be on. I'm like, watch the documentary, do your own research. And I'm like, if you have any questions, I'm like, now's the time to ask him when we have him on. And then he looked into it, in the first day or two, he's like, I don't know, man. He's like, it seems like there's a lot of people doubting what he's saying and saying it's pseudoscience. I'm like, Dave, do more thorough research. I'm like, you'll realize that it's a lot of the same people saying this. And he did more research, and after it was all said and done, and after the interview, he's like, why are they harassing this guy? I mean, he never claims anything besides having a treatment that can help, more than what's on the market, which is chemotherapy and radiation. And he gives you an alternative. And, and then you always get the argument, oh, well, there's people who had his treatment and died. And I'm like, yeah, they've had his treatment and died because it hasn't been FDA approved, which means you can only go to him when you're at the end of the line and you're almost dying anyways. Then that's when the FDA will be like, okay, we'll let you, I know there's a term for it, and let you use his treatment. And then, and he's helped a lot of people, and there's a lot of people who have protested for him and all this stuff. And he's had this amazing FDA battle since the, I think, late 80s, early 90s. And it's just amazing that this guy is being, his treatment is being suppressed, and it's at least not an alternative. I mean, this guy got his PhD when he was 24. He was considered like a genius until he obviously wants to fight cancer. And then all of a sudden he becomes a pseudoscience maniac. So,
through history, there have been practitioners and scientists like that. And it's a shame because there are natural remedies. Will it heal everyone? No. But will chemotherapy and radiation heal everyone? No. So then we go back to, how is the body functioning? Instead, they should be working with this doctor and say, okay, let's analyze, if we don't wait till stage 4, advanced cancer, why don't we go a little earlier, and let's see which cancers work best here. And then perhaps there's a pattern of functionality in this person. And we see that, okay, if these people have this pattern, they're going to respond amazing to your treatment. And these people won't respond amazing to your treatment. We'll then take those people and put them somewhere else. You know what I mean? Find another treatment. No one, and this is what I see all the time, no one is working together. No one. When we're dealing with conventional medicine. And I think they're scared because there are answers and they cannot turn it into a market. I mean, cancer treatment is huge. Chemotherapy is a huge business. We look at vaccines, it's $1 trillion business. We look at antidepressants, another, big business. All of this. And I'm not saying if people think they need it, then they should take it. But what I have seen is anyone on antidepressants, anyone on focus, they can't focus and they're on somewhere on, ADD, ADHD, their bodies are still imbalanced. So the medicine may help them function, but why don't we go and look deeper at the root cause, look at where the imbalances are and fix that? I'm not saying it's either one way or the other way. Why aren't we working together? And that's the biggest problem that you will see. And then you have these people that come out of the woodwork and they'll say, put them on the crack watch, Really? Who are you to judge? Because usually the alternative people really care about making someone healthy. There's not money in that like there is money in the pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, and there's tons of alternative doctors out there that have experimented with oils, and I know Suzanne Summers, fought breast cancer without using chemo, and what's her name, Chris Carr or something like that. Another somebody, she wrote a book I saw a long time ago about, and I think it turned into a documentary about her fighting cancer, and I think she used a lot of like yoga and all these things that seem silly, but you figure if your body is healthy, or if your brain's healthy and happy, then it must have some chemical reaction to your body. I mean, there's this book that I just heard about recently, Mind Over Back Pain, and it's like this doctor that was a back surgeon that come to find out, he was like, well, I don't get it. This guy has a herniated disc and way worse than this guy, and this guy's in no pain, and this guy's in pain. And he come to find out, he ended up finding this link between stress in your life and the fact that you had this mental stress that was finding a weakness in your body to release. And it seems like pseudoscience, but this guy was like a back surgeon, well respected, and was nowhere in the alternative medicine world, and then end up finding this weird link. Which, I mean, if you ask somebody else, they'd be like, "Oh, that sounds like a voodoo doctor or something." But it's just, he found this link to it, and he wrote a book called, I think it was called Mind Over Back Pain. And it's just like, so we forget that like the brain and the body's connected, and that it is one thing. And if you feel, or if you feel good mentally, a lot of times you feel good physically too, and they do insist. And do you agree with that?
100%. So there was studies that showed for cancer patients, the one who had positive outlooks, positive mindsets, did so much better. They healed faster than the ones who had negative ones. So now stress, like I have a 9-step program to healthy living. And I always want, it's not just about supplements and food and what we drink, but one of the most important steps is stress. Because I can say you could do all of these things right, but if you can't address the stress in your life, and we all have it, so you need some type of stress strategies to reduce them or know how to deal with them, then all of this is not going to work, because what stress does, it shuts down digestion. You can't absorb your nutrients. It then puts your imbalance of your adrenal system, lowers your vitamin C, which is it's the major antioxidant with glutathione, and it lowers your B6, and that affects the mood as well. So it's a vicious cycle. And then you go for certain foods to give you a boost mentally or emotionally, or give you the energy, and now you're feeding into, could be bacteria and everything else. So yes, stress is definitely involved, and our mindset is so important. When I meet someone and they have this mindset like, this is what I have, but I want to get better, and we do testing. I've done testing through all these years, and when I give someone the results and I say, here's this customized regimen that I put together for you, well, some people will follow it and some people will never follow it. And I'm thinking, why did you take the time and the expense? To me, it also goes back to, I don't think they think they're worth it, or they could overcome it, or they don't want to put the time into it. But it's a lifestyle. We need to learn how to live a healthy lifestyle. And even if, so your family tradition is it to have Portuguese wine or something, that's fine. Incorporate it. Make it a lifestyle. Don't overdo anything, and you won't feel deprived, but you'll be happy and healthier and clear-minded. I mean, I see it from my own kids. So I have 16 and 18-year-olds. And so since my kids were very, very, young, and once I figured out what to feed them and what supplements to put them on and everything, they have such clear thinking, and I don't see that among many teenagers. And I say, well, if this teenager, if they're eating all these foods that are excitotoxins and they're getting excited and irritated, perhaps this is why then their judgment is off, But instead, if we nourish the brain from when they're very small, then they'll go into adulthood with all the right nutrients. And if they really care about their body, as opposed to being forced to follow a protocol, then they're not going to want to do the bad stuff because they've taken their brains and everything, and their health so seriously. And I think that's what we're missing in America.
Yeah, that's one thing people don't realize is how addictive sugar is. That's another thing I know you mentioned sugar, and I know there's been studies about how it's more addicting than heroin or cocaine, one of the two, but or probably both. But and the other thing, the clarity with thinking and energy levels, that's all affected by what you eat and what you're taking in. And I feel where if I have a high carb meal where my girlfriend's Italian also, so she likes pasta and stuff like that, and it's just I really don't feel sharp, and I don't feel like I can gather my sentences as good or really come up with my thoughts as well. And just really, I mean, it's a huge effect. And you probably, I guess if you're doing, just mindless work around the house, or you're doing, you really don't notice it. But I notice it when I do these podcasts, because a lot of times there's a lot of things in the back of my head that I want to bring up or I want to talk about, or things I want to remember for the show. And then I'll struggle to remember them, or I'll notice that one show I won't be as sharp as another show, and I'll be like, what the hell did I do different? And then I realize maybe it's what I ate before the show, or a couple hours before the show, or what I had to eat that day. And so that has a huge effect.
Yeah, and we also, there's a food allergy test, and it's really the ones when you go to conventional doctors, again, it's mostly food allergy tests, but I love doing the food intolerance test. So like you mentioned, it's a delayed intolerance. It may be within 15 minutes of eating something, or it may be up to 24 hours. But when you're clear-minded and you are observant like you are, that's the best situation for a person to be in, because now you, like others, could say, when I had that, I would write it down. I would write down what you ate for the day and when you do the podcast and how you felt, and then make your own pattern. And if you want to have pasta, there's organic black bean pasta that has over 22 grams of protein, and it comes in spaghetti style. So you could at least have those type of things, or you could add a lean protein with it, so you can balance out, so it's just not carbohydrates. But yeah, it's so important. It goes back to awareness, and I think we have all lost sight of it, and there's very few people that can make that connection like you can. So that's really great. And if we could at least teach people, how do you feel afterwards? Are you tired? Do you have a headache? Do you have energy? What about mental clarity? If we could do that, that's think of the service that one could do for the rest of their life. Yeah. Because then they're actually in their body and in their mind, as opposed to just doing. I think so many people just do. They go, they start the day, they do the same thing over and over again. And then, people say, hey, you want to do this? And they don't even really put much thought into it. Like so many people go into careers and then they don't like them. And now they have a family and they're stuck because they got to pay the bills. And maybe they wait till they're retired then to really do what they love. Is it because they weren't conscious, really aware back then? when they were younger. And the same thing with the food. I mean, you don't want to wait until, God forbid, you have a degenerative disease to say, hey, maybe I should look at the food. Yes, the body is resilient, but why even go through all of that physical, emotional stress? And I think, we need all to wake up.
Yeah. And what would you say is, foods that wouldn't affect your clarity, or things that are what would be a good start for, like, even breakfast, for example? Because I know obviously we've been sold the idea of having these big breakfasts and a lot of bagels and cream cheese and all this stuff. And really, I feel my best when I just have a black cup of coffee and some scrambled eggs. Something simple, easy to digest. Stay away from like breads and bagels and stuff like that. That's like heavy and hard too. Because a lot of those things, you end up having like a boost of energy, then you crash. And a lot of it is food too. And then that's when you go to your cup of coffee. And every industry is helping another industry, where it just keeps us addicted to these things. But for breakfast, for example, what would be a good, if people are looking for, okay, what can I eat in the morning that will prevent me crashing or prevent me feeling foggy? What would be a good choice?
Well, you want to start off with some type of protein, like you mentioned. So think about, your body has not eaten anything since the night before, right? And now you have slept through the night, hopefully. Lots of people have interrupted sleep, but hopefully you have slept. And while you sleep, your body is doing restorative processes, right? Now you wake up, and you may, if you don't work from home, you may have to go on a bus or get into a car or take a train, right? You have to commute and you have to go someplace. Many people just go with nothing, or they go with coffee. And I'm like, really? That's like going into a car that's on E. How far is it going to go? Not far. Eventually, you're going to run out of gas. You're going to run out of energy. So if you put carbohydrates in your body right away, that's going to turn into sugar, especially anything white, right? That will turn into sugar. Yeah, the coffee will give you a boost, but that's not going to last. It's nutritionally deficient, right? There's nothing there. But if you start off with a lean protein, right? So what I like to do is first start off detoxifying the body. So getting a glass of water, squeezing a lemon, even if a half of a lemon, into water, putting a splash of apple cider vinegar. I like Bragg's, that company. You take that is going to cleanse your body. It's going to get your pH in the right balance. It's going to get rid of acid. People think lemon is acid. Actually, when it goes into your body, it alkalines it. So that's a good start. Right? And many people are so dehydrated because they don't drink water. They go for the coffee first, and the coffee dehydrates. I don't care if it was made with water, it dehydrates. So you would want to start off with a glass of water, right? And then if you are addicted to coffee, well, if you don't have it, you're going to get a headache from the caffeine withdrawal. Same thing with tea if it has caffeine. So then think about, what proteins can I have? Whoever thought of these breakfast foods like waffles and pancakes and this and that, if we think about the hunters, they weren't out there making pancakes, waffles, bagels, and all that stuff. Instead, they went for meat, right? So if you go and get a comfort or the country breakfast order at a diner, what is that? Potatoes, eggs, bacon, or ham. Well, at least they have, and then they throw in some bread, but at least they're going for the protein. So I know in my household, for breakfast, after we do the water thing, then we go into a piece of fruit, not a big piece, like an apple or a pear, which is the water content is very high. Again, that cleanses. Then we go into the protein, and either I'm sauteing roast beef on top of spinach, or I'm doing a lemon chicken, or I'm doing a grass-fed, grass-finished little steak and string beans or broccoli, or the sunny side up eggs are great because the yolk is intact and it has a lot of great nutrients. So yeah, it starts off with a protein. If you can't do that, at least you can make a protein shake. And I'm not talking about using whey. You can get a vegan protein shake. You can use either coconut milk, cashew milk. Almond milk is high in salicylate, so it really doesn't help if you have attention issues. But I like to go with the more fatty milks. And then you could put in a scoop of protein made out of a pea protein, the whole pea protein. And that has like 22 grams of protein. And it's very filling, and you can make it as thick as you want, or whatever consistency. So that's a great way, and you're going to be so alive, right? And then you could even add spirulina. So spirulina is blue-green algae. It's a superfood. If you don't like the way it tastes or look, because it is green, you can take it in tablet form. So I got these guys off of the 5-hour energy drink. They would start work at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they would go for the 5-hour energy drinks or the Red Bull thing, so they were all hyped up. They were really going nuts, and they came back, and they were young, in their 20s, and they came back with really bad blood test results. So I got them to say, listen, start off with the water, and if you can't have anything, do the smoothie and take the spirulina tablets. It gave them so much energy, and then the blood tests were fine because it wasn't artificial. And it has a lot of protein in it, but it has a lot of greens and chlorophyll, and it gives you a lot of energy in a very clean way. So you always want to start off with a protein. It helps with focusing, it helps with energy, and you want to continue throughout the day. The whole goal is to keep your blood sugar level even. And the only way to do that is not letting it go spike up and go down. And you want to keep consistently giving your body protein throughout the day, at least 3 meals a day. And then the snacks, if you could eat nuts, have some nuts. Don't go for that Milky Way. Put in some spirulina, those are the type of things that you could do. Have goji berries with cashews, the raw, organic cashews, or pecans or almonds.
Yeah, the Red Bulls, I mean, that is just sugar and caffeine. That is so unhealthy, and you don't sustain that energy. It's guaranteed you're going to crash. And the other thing, you talked about fruit, and I know a lot of people are probably thinking, well, fruit has a lot of sugar. But there is a difference between natural sugar in fruit. I mean, you digest it easier. It's better for you, and so there is a difference between the natural fruit.
There's a difference, and there's a difference between drinking like orange juice and eating the orange. So if you drink juice in the morning, it's like IV of sugar into your body. But if you eat the fruit, and you want to look at the low glycemic index fruits. So like a mango, as good as mangoes are, they're very high glycemic. Bananas, people eat bananas for potassium, but they're very high glycemic. Instead, if you go for like your pear or your apple and you eat the skin, you clean it good, you eat the skin, and hopefully it's organic, and you don't go for a ton of them. Like people will say, oh, I love to have a big bowl of berries and strawberries, and then I put sugar on, and I'm like, oh my gosh, why are we putting sugar on berries, and why is it this big? Like, just have a few, balance it out. If you eat in moderation and you eat in balance, so say you start off with your drink, your lemon drink, and then you go into a small piece of fruit, and then you go into the protein. Nowhere have we added the carbohydrate from bread, from, anything white, right? So it's all going to be absorbed, and that's going to give you so much energy.
Yeah, and the other thing you mentioned that I forgot to bring up again was the eggs, because I think that's an important point. We've been told that eggs, the yellow of the eggs, the yolk, is bad for you. And I actually had somebody explain to me why it isn't bad for you, something about how it breaks down or whatever, the cholesterol in it. But it's not bad for you, right? So if people are listening and they're afraid to eat, they get egg whites or whatever, you're losing a lot of the nutritional value in eggs by throwing out the yolk.
Yeah, the egg whites, it's not as nutritious as a full egg. And again, you want organic or free range, because you don't want that to have any antibiotics or growth hormones, which is the estrogen, or anything else in there. So if you have the full egg, you're getting in the yolk is choline, and that is great for your memory. Besides that, we have a nice protein of amino acids that we're passing on. If you separate something, it's half, right? And again, yes, we were misinformed about the egg and the dangers of the egg.
Well, look at the pyramid, the food pyramid. I mean, that thing was it's so off, and it's all marketing, like you said. Like, now going organic is in, so now you'll see companies put organic on their labels, or no GMOs or whatever. And even though there's a lot of there's a lot of tricks to put a label on something and not really completely being organic. I know you talked about grass finished which is well, you'll explain it better than I will. Well, what that is.
So there's a lot of labels, and I always say if you look at the UPC code, when it starts with a number 9, it's organic, right? Now, I was in Whole Foods yesterday, and I was like, oh my God, now they got a whole nother process here. So it wasn't organic, but it said this company was raised as organic, it's environmentally conscious, it doesn't use pesticides, but it does not have the organic certification. Okay, because if you go to your local farmers markets, you'd be surprised, at least here in New York, when I went to California, everybody was organic. But in New York, on the East Coast, the farmers market, I had to go through 20 farmers to find one organic one. And I'm like, I don't want to buy local pesticides. I don't want to buy any pesticides. So you really do have to ask the farmer. If you ask the farmer and they say, listen, we do use these conventions, we don't use the pesticides, but we can't afford the organic certification, then it's up to you. Do you trust them? Do they invite you to the farm? Which we've been to, farms. When I had to feed my son, I wanted to know exactly where it was coming from. So I found out back then there was something called grass-fed and grass-finished, so lots of these stores charge a high premium for grass-fed, but they don't tell you the last 2 months of the animal's life, they're pumping them up with corn and soy, and it can be genetically modified if it's not organic. If the meat doesn't say organic, but it just says grass-fed, that animal is getting corn and soy. Now, my son was highly allergic to corn and soy, and I was not going to give him anything that ate what he was allergic to, because in my theory, you pass that on, those amino acids, those peptides, those excitotoxins, I'm not having it. So instead, you find farmers who feed their animals the way they're supposed to be fed, grass, all year round, hay, that type of stuff. So when you hear a farmer is grass-fed, grass-finished, it means for the entire lifespan of this animal, they had no grains whatsoever. So that's what you want.
Yeah. Hey, I'm actually just surprised that animals live longer than 2 months for them to feed them, because it seems like animals now are just like pumped up with steroids and killed anyways. There's a good documentary, Future of Food, that kind of shows like a chicken, back in, I think it was the 80s and like today, and it's like in half the time it's 10 times the size, and it just, my parents have a garden in the backyard because they were farmers in Portugal and stuff, and they have chickens running around, and anytime I have friends or my girlfriend over, they're like, I know this is better for me, but this chicken doesn't taste as good. And I'm like, that's because you're used to these just steroid-filled chickens where they're plump and they're huge, and then you get these chickens like my parents have where they roam around, so their muscles tighten up and the meat tightens up. So it's not, we're so used to one type that I think I even have another friend, my buddy Eddie, who's the same thing. I'm like, you don't ever eat. He's like, I hate my parents' chickens at home. I'm like, but Eddie, it's better for you. And he's like, yeah, but it doesn't taste good. And I'm like, because we got so used to this, and so it's hard to kind of make that transition.
Well, also, there was information that was brought to our attention, the consumer's attention, that lots of meats are injected with certain things, that the one from the farm is not injected. So they're injected with different sodiums, they're injected with just different flavorings, and you wouldn't even know. So they were not, they didn't have to disclose the information, and then something, like the crap came out, and then people were like, oh my God, what's in that? Same thing with the pink slime and the meat glue. When that came out, it was like, oh my gosh, like now people know that this filet mignon was not filet mignon. It was bits and scraps of the worst part of the animal. And then they put this meat glue, which gelled it over, and it looks like filet mignon. And it's being served in the classiest restaurants in New York City for a very high price. So even that, it's like in this program that I teach, it's like buyer beware. The consumer has to be so much smarter. We need to understand. We need to know what to ask. Like even when we went to Disney one time, and that's like a sensory overload in itself, there was a restaurant where they offered burgers. So I just wanted to know, was this burger a conventional burger? Was it a patty? What's in it? Is it 100%? Because they said 100% beef. And I said, well, how was it raised? And the manager was like, I don't know. And I said, well, let me tell you something. Like if you bring this to someone's attention, then they'll really get you the answers. If my child eats something that was this or that, he's gonna puke all over this place, you know? So then like, well, hold on, let me go find out. Come to find out, he was the manager for 5 years and he had no clue that they were not 100% burgers. They were patties that had wheat and soy flour and all these other monosodium glutamate in it. So people don't even know what they're really getting. And that's really sad. You know, and then I don't know, Michael Bloomberg, when he was the mayor in New York City, he tried to put a limit on the soda size and people got up in arms. How dare government tell us what to eat? Well, you know what? Maybe you need help because obesity is huge now. When I was growing up, there was very, very little. Yeah. And now we see it even in the kids.
Well, our quality of food's definitely gone downhill. A lot of our foods here are banned from, Europe. I know the EU has banned a lot of our foods, and the food. I mean, even if you travel overseas, the McDonald's in Europe is different than the McDonald's here, and it's just like I think they just know they can sell us whatever. I mean, if they spend half the money in food quality as they do in marketing, they'd actually have decent food quality. But they'd rather spend the littlest money possible for in food quality and then just spend all this money on having clowns that attract kids so they can be addicts for the rest of their lives. So, and as a parent, I'm sure and that's the other thing. Like, actually, another thing that I wanted to bring up to you is vaccines. Are you have you looked in? Obviously, being a parent, I'm sure that's another thing you've probably researched quite a bit. Obviously, that's something that's coming up with eventually after having a kid. That's always a question, and of course, every doctor is going to tell you, "Oh yeah, this is completely safe," but I don't really trust most of them. So it's one of those things. I'm kind of and you get conflicting. I know Gary Knowles did the documentary Vaccination, but he obviously has a very strong anti-vaccine perspective. And then you get the other side where people are very pro-vaccine. So it's just like, I know the truth usually is somewhere in the middle. And from a parent and having to go through this yourself, with having a child, is that something you looked into also?
Yeah, and I'm also a Defeat Autism Now practitioner. So I have I've seen a lot of special needs kids, and you listen to the parents, and a great majority of them said that something happened after a certain set of vaccines. Now you'll have other people that say, no, my kid was on the autism spectrum and never got vaccinated, right? So you'll have that subset. And then the tests that they do on vaccines, who are these tests run by, right? And then in the New York Times a few years ago, the guy who covered up that vaccines did not cause autism then came out and said, it did. We had to change all our numbers.
Is this the CDC guy who... Because I actually, in the first week of December, I'm having John Rappaport on, and he was one of the guys who broke that story open and investigated it. So, yeah, that's going to be interesting to get more into that story, because I think the first time it became public knowledge that, a person who actually was involved in, I believe he was involved in the actual study, right?
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff and there's a lot of controversy, right? It's $1 trillion business, and there's a lot of lawsuits that the government would have, had to pay trillions of dollars to these damaged kids. Again, we go back to when I was growing up, and the school that I went to is a very strict school. Were there any kids with speech issues, OT issues, sensory issues, compliance issues that there is now, autism spectrum disorders, PDD, NOS, ADD, ADHD, Asperger's? Think about so when I went to school, no, there wasn't. Now, if you go into a regular ed class, you could probably count on one hand kids that don't have one of those variances of those issues. So what's changed? The food has dramatically become toxic. The number of vaccines have changed. When I went to school, I was 4. I was a little earlier when I went to school, and I got one vaccine, right? But I got measles, I got mumps, my brother got rubella, and I definitely got chicken pox, right? Now, usually you get somewhere, and it changes every year, but like anywhere from 22 plus by the time they go to school, right? So you go back to, why can someone get vaccinated and be okay, and why can someone get vaccinated and not be okay? And I would say we look back at functionality of the body. Can that baby detoxify? Does that baby have something called glutathione? Boys are lower in glutathione. Is it a coincidence that majority of kids on the spectrum are boys? Could it be because they're lower in glutathione? That's one question we should look into. Could it be that if you give your child Tylenol before or after the vaccine, there have been studies that links Tylenol lowers the glutathione, and there's linked to special needs issues in that child then? Could it be that they, on one day, if you look at it, they will put 4 different vaccines into this child, but those 4 vaccines, some of them could have 3 things in them. So it's not just 4, it could be 12, so if we're talking, that's a lot. Could it be that this child can't fight off viruses, So there's a lot to look into. There's nvic.org, which that would be a great person to get on your show, because she does a lot of research and information and gets it out. There's 9 questions you should ask before you vaccinate your child. And if the child is sick in any way, the doctor may say, or the nurse practitioner may say, oh, you're already here. Otherwise, we'll have to do this as, depending on your insurance, this will have to be, a care visit. And then you'd have to come back for the other visit. And, oh, but they're sick already, so why don't we just inject them now? So you have to be your child's health advocate. You have to ask these questions. You have to see if the kid's under stress. Even just breaking gums and getting the teeth coming in is very stressful for a kid. They go through a lot. They could run a fever. You wouldn't want to vaccinate then. So these are the things you want to look at. But wouldn't you want to know, can my child throw out this? Can my child fight this off? How's my kid's immune system? How's their vitamin C? How's their glutathione? I think that the doctors should run a functional medicine test on the baby first before they think about vaccinating. And quite frankly, why do we have to give vaccines right away? I know in Boston, they changed the ruling several years ago, but in hospitals over here, as soon as the woman gives birth, they'll whisk the child off and give them a hepatitis shot. Really? Are they in danger of hepatitis? If we think about what you need to do to get hepatitis, really, are they in danger? Are you traveling to a third world country? Is the kid going to shoot up or have intercourse? I really don't think so. So why are we doing this? Where's the logic here? Why are we putting toxins in? And then, are there clean vaccines? I would say no, because they add a lot of additives. So you want to really check the vaccine ingredients, right? So then they'll say, oh, there's no more mercury or thimerosal in vaccines anymore. But then you ask the doctor, can I see the pamphlet? And in the pamphlet, they're like, well, it was replaced with aluminum. Okay, aluminum toxicity is called Alzheimer's in adults. It could be autism in children, but it's a neurotoxin. And then some of them still have remnants or a small amount of mercury. So the doctors don't even know. So this is, I would say.
What's the answer? Well, because obviously you have to have, I know there's certain ones that are required, right? You have to, especially, or at least to go to school, you're required.
It depends on your state. So there are certain states that you don't need any vaccines. It's up to you.
Really?
But then you have to see, okay, so when is your kid going to school? It all depends. Are they going to daycare? Are they going to stay home till they're 2? Okay, so then are we staying here? Are we going to feed them healthy? Are we going to boost up their immune system? Some families, I just tell you what some families do, they wait until the child goes to school. And during that time, they've missed out on the rotavirus, the pneumonia virus, the vaccines for all of those because they age out, because they say, oh, your child needs this from this age to that age. Now that they're 2, well, they don't need those anymore. They just need this one. So many families will just wait and do like the measles, mumps, rubella, and they'll do the chicken pox, and that's it, never on the same day. Now, there's also what we call boosters. So they're making it younger and younger. When my kids, before my kids, the measles, mumps, rubella was much older. Now they're making it as young as 12 months. But then they say, oh, well, we might as well put, there's measles, mumps, rubella, and chickenpox all in one vaccine. So it's just one jab, or your insurance company won't pay for those 2 on the same day. All right, so let's come back or whatever. It's a personal decision, but you really need to do your homework, and you really need to see your child and the children that have been on antibiotics and ear infections and strep and this and that and been vaccinated throughout the time. This is what I hear from the parents that, then something got triggered and they lost them. And then, between the food and everything else. So can you delay it? What is the necessity of getting it now? Quite frankly, if I were to have another child again, I would want my child to reach the milestones first before I thought about putting something that could possibly, even if there was a 10% chance of damaging them. Because, if that happens, the person who gave them that, they're not going to be there with you and your significant other going through the stressful times trying to heal your child. I mean, so that's a really personal decision that you don't want to leave to anybody else. And you want to say, well, and the doctors will scare some parents and say, but if you don't do this, they could end up this way. I've seen this and that, and then you'll have other doctors that will refuse to see you.
Yeah, I've heard stories. Yeah.
It happens. I mean, I've been dealing with these families for many times. And then you'll have other doctors that if you go in and say, listen, I'm not anti-vaccine, but I want to wait until the child is this age and I want to do 1 here, and you pick the ones. So that's an abbreviated vaccine schedule. Dr. Sears had put a book together, wrote a book about an abbreviated vaccine schedule. That may work. But I would definitely do my research and really be on top of that. And you have a guest coming on as well. But personally, as a parent, I would want to make sure, is my kid crawling, walking, first sitting up, crawling, walking? Does my kid have any sensory issues? Does my kid's gross motor, is that working? Do they have low muscle tone? Can my kid suck? Can my kid throw a kiss and kiss me or blow a bubble? These are the things that we see, the damage afterwards. And then can my kid point? Children point at a young age. Like you say, oh, look at the sun, and they point. So there are certain things you want to make sure the kid has achieved. And then from crawling to walking and speaking, right? So after that, if you want to go ahead, then still I would first run a test to make sure, can they detoxify? And then for families that want to vaccinate, we have a little protocol to do before and after. So we boost up their antioxidants, and then after we boost up their immune boosting supplements as well. So there are certain things that you can do as opposed to blindly doing it, and never give Tylenol. Motrin would be better, infant Motrin, and then the only times that if the fever isn't coming down and then the doctor says, okay, do Motrin, and then 4 hours later do Tylenol, yes. But to put Tylenol near the vaccines, and some people may say, oh, that's ridiculous. Well, go to the studies. There are studies out there. The Autism Research Institute has the studies. It's not like this is voodoo. There's really good studies that show this. And then, quite frankly, if you talk to a Defeat Autism Now practitioner, you will hear the same thing over and over again. The parents will give you the history. And most of the time, lots of doctors don't have time to listen to it because of insurance. There's time constraints. But there's a pattern even to what people are saying when it happened. Was it regressive autism where the kid spoke and then they stopped speaking? But look at that time frame. This is when something happens. And was there a vaccine involved or not, you know?
Yeah, in Connecticut or New York, when the kid's born, do they have any required vaccines to give immediately? Because the thing is, like, you don't know the strength of the kid's immune system. He hasn't been exposed to bacteria, nothing. Like, his body's just still developing, and to shoot him up with multiple vaccines all at once, it just seems like if I had a choice, I mean, obviously I'm still going to continue to do research, but just thinking about it, it just seems dangerous and possibly harmful.
I mean, especially the hepatitis one that they give in the hospital. So when you decide what hospital, maybe you know that already, you want to call the hospital and say, what are your procedures? Again, I know Boston changed because they said, no, this is ridiculous. They don't need it. And I read that in the Wall Street Journal. I was so impressed. In New York and Connecticut, you have to inform the hospital that you don't, at least currently, that you don't want this to happen, you know, or if you go with, like, there are certain midwives and there's, you know, doctors who work with the midwives and they work out of hospitals that don't do the vaccines. So there's a lot of things you can look into with that. But then you also want to start interviewing the pediatrician now, you know, so as new parents, you want to take the child, they got to always measure their heads and their weight and this and that, make sure they're growing and all that stuff. But you want to say, you know, what's your stand to the doctor on vaccines? Do you, you know, there's a place in Poughkeepsie, New York, that they do both. If you want to vaccinate, they don't vaccinate. They don't throw you out. That's fine. If you want to vaccinate, they follow the schedule or they follow an abbreviated schedule. So that's really good. But then even with the medicine, you know, so like, God forbid your child needs antibiotics. Is it pure antibiotics? If not, go find a compounding pharmacy in your neighborhood that can offer just the antibiotic. And then they mix it with like xanthan gum and they could add stevia instead of sugar. Because if you see, like, antibiotics for kids are pink and they taste like bubble gum. Really? Why do we need that? We're putting sugar and a flavoring, artificial. You know, so once you have a kid, you see a whole different set of things that you just get blown away. Like, really? Are you kidding me? That's like not natural. We could find a different way.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, this has been a super informative podcast. This is and again, it's awesome when it does seem like there's a link between passionate people about health and vaccines and all of these things, and I don't think it's a coincidence that most of them are mothers. And I think it is that link between, you know, I think women are hardwired to be, you know, to be nurturers, and I think when you start putting yourself second to the child, you start really focusing on these other things. And before I let you go, there is one question. I had a friend of mine, Kate. She's huge in vitamin D. I mean, she's kind of in a vitamin D cult. I kid with her. I'm like, you're in a vitamin D cult. But it's like this, I forget, she's supposed to send me some books and stuff like that. And just this whole idea of how vitamin D can be just a huge difference maker and how important it is in nutrition. Do you find that or in vitamin D, or is there any specific vitamin that you think really is one that we cannot lack in having and really we should put a focus on?
Well, so one of my blogs that I wrote recently was, is the perfect storm brewing inside of you? And basically what happens is, you know, why do people get the cold and the flu? And they think that bacteria is now coming out. Well, bacteria is all over, right? And it's been all over. But what's different, at least on the East Coast, we don't get sunshine anymore for so many months, right? And then from Halloween on, most people are eating so much more sugar. Then we go into Thanksgiving and the holidays, we're getting less sleep. We could get anxiety, stress, being around family members or friends or coworkers, and we're eating worse. And we're not exercising, we're not taking care of ourselves, we're sleep deprived. And what do we need? We're lacking vitamin D. We're not getting it from the sun. And even if we do go out in the sun, we put so much sunscreen on, you know, I'm not saying burn yourself, but like 20 minutes without sunscreen at the right time of the day, you get the vitamin D. So that's not happening. Majority of people are vitamin D deficient. If anyone's going on an annual physical, they have to ask when they give blood for their complete blood count to include vitamin D to see where it is. It should be higher than the midpoint. So vitamin D is great for the immune system. It helps rejuvenate your cells. It helps with your skin, your hair. It helps with everything. It really does balance out. I would say it's a major one. Vitamin C is also huge. The problem is 90% plus of vitamin C in the US is made from corn. The label could actually say does not contain corn because it doesn't contain the corn protein, but it was derived from corn. So that doesn't make any sense. Then there's corn out there for, it's called non-allergic vitamin C that's not derived from corn. That's important. We need antioxidants to push out toxins. Vitamin C and N-acetylcysteine are the precursor to glutathione. So that's really important. Taking care of the liver is really important as well. You mentioned milk thistle. You could have dandelion tea. Cleaning your diet. So on my website, there is a free access to my detox podcast because I want people to know just changing one's diet and what we drink can detoxify the body. We don't need to do some detox regimen and juice for 3 days and not eat food. I mean, it doesn't have to be so invasive. So just really keeping our food intake and our liquid intake as pure as possible is going to be important. But vitamin D, definitely. There's a doctor out in Chicago that recommends pregnant women to have an astronomical amount of vitamin D. And then for kids, he says, I don't have any kids that have special needs in my practice because I put the pregnant moms on high vitamin D and I put the children on high vitamin D. I mean, I wouldn't go too high, but it is important. And they're saying like 400 international units for a kid. That's way too low. Like I personally take 5,000. My kids take 5,000 international units. And you have to also wonder about the ratio and what the government says, these agencies, like what a good amount is. Because like really, was this, it's probably antiquated research.
Yeah.
So vitamin D is good for you.
Well, the other thing people don't realize is that if if you take a lot of vitamins, most of them, if not almost all of them, aren't harmful to your body. So people think like, 1,000% of vitamin D, that sounds insane, but it's like really you just dispose of it. If that's why when you take a multivitamin, your urine looks like fluorescent, green or whatever. It's because all those extra vitamins are just coming out of your body. So it's not harmful. That's why I think these alternative medicines like natural herbs and remedies are important to look into because it should be a first resort. And unfortunately, it's usually not even an option or even one that's brought up. But it's just like pharmaceutical drugs should be a last resort because those are proven harmful to your body. You're putting something in your body that it doesn't recognize. It doesn't know what it is. That's why you have this list of amazing list of side effects that are usually way worse than what you're trying to prevent in the first place. And, and it's a huge issue. So it's like worst case scenario, if you try some natural remedies, some vitamins, if it doesn't work, it won't harm you. And, you just can move on to something else after. But at least you gave it a try. And if it does work, you find something that comes from food. That's why I love these guys like, Dr. Offit and a couple other doctors are like anti-vitamin. And I'm just like, vitamins come from food. If they're good vitamins and they're not synthetic vitamins, they come from food. So you saying vitamins don't work or vitamins aren't good, it's like saying dieting and food doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense, So it just, it's funny when you hear these people, these anti-vitamin people that are just like, I'm like, it's linked to food. I mean, it comes from food. So obviously vitamin C in orange juice is good. Obviously taking vitamin C in a pill form is good. Why wouldn't it be? So.
Yeah, and one of my favorites is probiotics. So there are, it really, when you mention about supplements, they have to be quality, and you can't really go to Costco or, drugstores to get really quality supplements. So probiotics, and my favorite company is Claire. these probiotics, you don't want them made on milk. You don't want them having maltodextrin because, again, that could be genetically modified corn. You don't want any soy. But probiotics are beneficial bacteria, right? And it's great for pregnant women. It's great for adults, kids, newborns. And when I see, what I like is when I see the couples before and then, before conception, and we find out how their bodies are. And then I see them during the pregnancy and then when the baby's born. And if a child is colicky, the pediatricians some pediatricians will give medicines. So I had a child come in the office who was 1 month old on 4 different medicines at 1 month.
Wow.
And then this doctor on top of it said you could put a little sweet, little sugar and I was like, are you kidding? So what the best way and many kids positively progress when they have colicky issues is that, they need digestive enzymes. There are infant digestive enzymes. Even if they're having breast milk, they still have to break this down, right? God forbid they're having formula. At that point, you can make your own. And they have probiotics, infant probiotics. And the kids that come in with colicky issues, when we put them on this, it all goes away. And they absorb all their foods. So for me, it's very rewarding and fulfilling when I see a child very young and then you see them grow through the years and you're like, wow, it's fantastic how the parents were so empowered with the knowledge and they really took this into their own hands. Yes, they went to the pediatrician, but they researched and they said, hey, why not try this? We could always go to medicine if it doesn't, but why not try this? This is not going to harm. And lots of pediatricians now are saying if you're on an antibiotic, go on a probiotic, but they'll recommend, go to CVS and pick up the probiotic there. You're like, oh my God, it's not even refrigerated. It has to be refrigerated. It has to be alive to really be beneficial. And you have to know the right amount. And there are certain ones that you want to give children and certain ones that you don't. So you really have to know what you're dealing with, But that's something that really helps.
And, yogurt's a probiotic, right?
Yogurts are a probiotic, but then what do they add? They add a ton of sugar because, quite frankly, yogurt without sugar is like having cranberry juice without sugar.
Yeah. Because yogurt, even though it's I know Greek yogurt's gone very popular and stuff like that, I don't see how it can be very healthy, even though there is, some protein and stuff in it. There's just so much sugar in it. And then the fruit that they supposedly put in these things, it's like, wait, when was the last time you've seen fruit stay in a container that long and taste exactly the same? It's not fruit, it just kind of...
Right. So they have, I have this presentation that I do. It's called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly of Nutrition. And that would fall under the ugly, right? So the yogurts that aren't kosher have gelatin in them. And gelatin is, what makes a marshmallow, and it's from the animal, right? So bad enough, no one knows that they're having gelatin. And then on top of that, if it's strawberry flavor, it's from a bug, it's the excretions of a bug. It's the insides of the bug. It's disgusting. And then if it's fruit and it's not organic, it's loaded with pesticides. You have to look. Anytime you see natural flavoring, don't buy the product because that's a catch-all for anything. But they put all of this in and you would never know. Here you think you're eating the right thing. And then if it's not organic, it could have antibiotics and growth hormones and estrogen and everything else. So people will say, well, I have Greek yogurt. I say, is it organic? No. Now, does it have sugar? Yeah. What else does it have? Excuse me. Or when kids come in and they say they like those yogurts with the sprinkles in it. Oh my God, it's junk. This is not healthy. This is sugar.
Yeah, it's like cereal. I mean, so we've been told that cereal, is a healthy breakfast option, and it's just sugar, and it's marketed to kids, and really, like you said, it's just you get kids addicted to sugar at a young age, and then there's no turning back.
There's no turning back, and then even with the cereals, they'll say fortified with. Yes, they're fortified with because they have no nutritional value. and they have to put some type of vitamin in it to make it sellable. But all of these companies, it's really bad. It's really so bad. They don't care. And when you start to look at where this is from, the ingredients that it's from, it's not good.
And I know you talked about formula. So formula, if you can, obviously breast milk would be the best option. Stay away from formula.
Yeah, because, look at formula and look at the first ingredient, right? And you'll either see soy or you'll see corn. So especially for infants, for newborns, and that's what they'll give you at the hospital as free samples. And that's another thing you want to know, like, is the baby going to stay in the room with the mom, or does the baby get sent into the nursery? Because then, are they going to feed the baby in the nursery a formula because mom is sleeping or whatever? Best to, again, if it were my child, I would want the baby near me so I could take care of, I don't need a break for a day or two, But you want to ask these questions. Where does the baby stay? What do you feed the baby? We're going to breast milk. Okay, but are you going to supplement if the woman is sleeping or whatever? Important questions to ask. And even, what are you going to put on the baby? Or what mattress? What's the mattress? Mattresses have formaldehyde and toxins in it. You have to get an organic mattress for this baby. There's so much you have to look at. Don't buy Dreft. Dreft does all the commercials and you think it's healthy. That's what you're going to clean the baby stuff with, the baby clothes. You got to have Dreft. Why? It has chemicals in it. You want something that is free of dyes and perfumes, because then the baby is going to breathe all of that garbage in. When you paint the nursery, what are you going to use? Is the paint going to have VOCs in it? It's going to outgas, and if you're painting in the winter, did you keep all the windows closed so every outgassing stays there? Or you're going to go for the paints that have no VOCs? That there's so many things to consider. So you want to know not only what goes in your child, what goes on your child. You're going to use Johnson & Johnson shampoo with crazy ingredients in it, or you're going to use an organic, chemical-free. What are you going to use to clean the child? What are you going to use, when you clean the mouth? And what are you going to feed the child when you eventually go there? So, so important. It starts from very young.
Yeah, and I don't think females are big podcast listeners. I think most of them are males, but this would be an awesome podcast for mothers to be, because I definitely learned a lot, and it's amazing, these just all this information that's so important to get out there. And it's important to really, like you said, just think about what you're putting in your kid, what you're putting on your kid, what he's smelling, what all these things are going to affect the way he develops. And God forbid, you want to give the kid the best possible chance to develop as healthy as he can. And nobody wants that on their conscience to think that they could have done something differently. So,
yeah, and don't spray the room with Lysol. The husbands and the fathers and mothers, don't wear heavy cologne and perfume, unless it's made from essential oils. Even cologne and perfume is toxic. Everything that we put on us and anything in the house is so important. When I first started out, I used to go to homes and go through each room and just point out, well, that could be replaced with this, or that could be replaced with that, because we don't even realize. So important.
Yeah. So, Nancy, where can the listeners get a hold of you and hold some more information? And I do put on the video version of all the episodes on the YouTube channel underneath the show descriptions. I always put links to all the guests' work, but a lot of podcast listeners listen to it. They don't watch it. So if they are listening, what's the easiest way of getting to your stuff?
So if they are listening, and if they could follow me on any social media, I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest. Pinterest, I put all the foods I eat and the companies I recommend. And that's just Nancy Guberti, and that's spelled G-U-B as in boy, E-R-T-I. And then my website is nancyguberti.com, which is G-U-B-E-R-T-I. So So it's nancyguberti.com. And you could sign up for the blogs. You could listen to the detox. And then on another page, there's a total wellness guidebook that they could download. It's just about awareness and getting the information out. If anyone has a question, they could always ask it on Twitter or Facebook. And if they want to follow my kids, they're on teenagerintrapreneur.com.
That's
so
awesome.
That's just teenager with an R, intrapreneur.com. And that's where I talk about the clearness. Think about your child. You give your child the best possible thing, right? And he or she will think clearly, and then they will want to empower others, right? So these 16 and 18-year-olds teach at a university, and they teach teens how to take their passions, package them into products, promote themselves on social media, and propel their future. If you're not thinking clearly and you're not eating clearly, you may not be able to do that. So really, it starts from one's health. If you feel good, you could do so much. If you don't feel good, you're not going to do a lot. You're just going to do what you have to do to get by.
Absolutely.
So I would encourage everyone to take their health very seriously, because they are worth it. And just think, this is only one life, one body, and it's so important to know what's going on.
Is there any books or documentaries that you would recommend that really have been made a big impact on you?
For me, it was my own personal experience. Really, when the liver is compromised, you have to look at everything. Like I say, like what's in your house, what you're wearing. When I were to kiss my son, if I had lipstick on, I made sure it was organic lipstick. I didn't want to pass anything. So it really was, think of, you have to keep your body clean. And in order to do that, you need your liver to function. So for me, it was just, personal experience of making a purist for food, for the environment, and even for our stress and our emotions. One thing you'll learn is however you feel, your child will pick up on that. So if you get agitated, if you are peaceful, that child will pick that up. So you set the tone for the child and the household. So it's really important. It's really a lifestyle. There are some great documentaries out there. If a person is really into corn, I would say, there's a King Corn is one good one. Food, knives over forks over knives. That's a good one. There's so many. And I'm not saying that you follow one movement over another, but always learn something. The future of food about GMOs was really very helpful as well. Yeah, I would definitely watch as many documentaries as you can. Supersize Me, if you're a big fast food person, that's definitely one to see. The more you see these documentaries, the more you get to learn about different things.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that Forks Over Knives, they talk a lot about a plant-based diet and stuff like that. And I'm kind of on your boat with the idea of like naturally, our ancestors, they would eat what they could pick and what they could kill. So I mean, we kind of are naturally designed to eat meat, and our body recognizes and stuff like that. I'm not saying you can't live healthy lifestyle eating, taking meats away from your diet. But I just think that, you can definitely, I think there is a natural aspect to eating meats. And would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of vegans, and at the beginning, sometimes they feel great, right? And it could be because they were eating so unhealthy, and now they are eating much purer. But what I have seen, at least in my practice, and there are vegans that swear by the way they go, and I don't judge anybody. I would prefer everything in moderation in the purest form of what one is eating. Sometimes, then they get low in certain amino acids and certain B vitamins, so they have to supplement. But if it's pure meat and it's organic and it's grass-fed, grass-finished, there's something to be said about that, because you're actually getting healthier fats in your body. And it really does give you energy, and it's you get this complete protein with the amino acids to fuel your muscles and protect your skeletal body. And it's also very good for the brain. I mean, certain fishes are great for the brain, but we have to worry about the mercury levels, right? And we have to worry about, were they farm raised, or, where were they raised? Radioactive area, or, a gasoline spill. It's getting harder and harder. But I think it's good to have lean protein, and it does keep your blood sugar level even. So you really have to always keep that in mind.
Yeah, awesome. And do you have any more podcasts coming along? You're going to do any more? I know you have 2 episodes out at the moment.
Yeah, I have a biomedical one for children with special needs. And in the new year, I'm going to try to do a monthly podcast and really drive it from my patients' questions. So if they have a question to learn about, like, lowering cholesterol, then we're going to do that. And it's always offering do-it-yourself tips. And even I could put different documentaries on a blog post for anyone who's interested. I could add that. So it's always, the whole goal of any of the work that I do is to empower others. So again, if somebody just says, hey, what about that? How do you handle this? Well, here, let's offer the information either through a blog or through a YouTube channel. And then in also 2015, I'm going to be launching my 9-step program again. I do this at the beginning of the year for anyone, wanting to start off the year with their New Year's resolutions. And it's a 9-week program. But after those 9 weeks, for a complete year, they will get a new video every month. And I take them into the kitchen. And again, I do then weekly videos and weekly teleseminars just to empower people with the knowledge. So around cold and flu season, we talk about what foods you could eat and what supplements if you needed something feeling under the weather, as opposed to taking something that could be toxic.
Awesome. So definitely find Nancy on Twitter and Facebook. You'll get tons of information. I know since I've been following you, I just constantly see really interesting articles coming up. And obviously this is really important information because it affects the way we feel. It affects, if we end up getting sick later in life or have some medical issues. And so it just, your work is very important and it's awesome. I think you took the right career path away from Goldman Sachs and into this, because I think you can definitely see the passion that you have in this. And I think that everybody, including myself who looks into this, can't help but be passionate about it, because I think that it's we care. I think one of our first human instincts is to care about one another as people and the human species, and I think it's important to get this information out there and people to really be more aware of what they're putting in their bodies and try to live healthier lifestyles, because if not, we'll all just be brainwashed from marketing, and then nothing good comes out of that. So
that's true. We have to make a conscious effort, and this, what you do is really a movement. You're getting the information out. You're going after people who may have been blackballed, which is so sad because they're trying to do the right thing. So kudos to you for your podcast.
Thanks.
Keep it going, because this information needs to get out there. And I heard that more people are listening to podcasts than watching TV. Yeah. Because I think they do have this desire to learn. We are knowledge-hungry people. We just have to get the right information, and that's what your show is doing. So,
yeah, you're absolutely right. I think podcast is going to be the future of media. It's I think people are tired, and they're finally. They've noticed how censored TV is and how everybody has an agenda. And I think people like the rawness and the uncensored anarchy way of podcasts, of you're getting a real conversation, not, these are the words I'm going to say and the lines I'm going to say. And then these are the questions and Q&As and everything's kind of rehearsed and it's theater. And I think people like the rawness and you get to hear real questions, real conversations. And really, nobody tells me, obviously this is awful. I mean, you being in working for Goldman Sachs, about investments, and this is an awful investment because I make zero money off this. But it's really just, I have a family-owned construction company and this is just a hobby that I just really got passionate about and really find important. And it's it's in a way I'd love to take credit for doing this awesome thing that really is just spending money and not making any. But I also, in a selfish way, I also get to talk to people like you, where I get to learn stuff. I get to talk to people that well, you're one of the guests that aren't that far from me, but I have guests that, from all over the world, and, to be able to sit down and talk to them and learn something, because it really is a learning experience, just being able to sit down for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and just, whatever comes to mind to ask it. So it's just, it's fun because I really have grown throughout this, and these are a lot of topics that I'm passionate about. But to have people on that really spend their whole lives studying and researching these topics is just, it's awesome. And to be able to share that, I mean, that's why the podcast is called The Ripple Effect. I truly believe that we can all make our difference, even if it's just a little, ripple, and, you can impact one person, that person can impact another person, and it just becomes this ripple effect. So hopefully we all do our part, but it really is awesome to meet people like you who are passionate about this information and willing to share it and be open-minded to it. Because the other thing I've noticed is talking to you is that you don't seem like you have any agenda. Like I was talking about forks over knives, how they really are push the idea of plant-based diets, and you have all these people that have these, they get stuck in ideology, and then they don't really look beyond that. And it seems like you're very open-minded to basically just looking for what's the healthiest option, not trying to restrict one thing or another.
Exactly, because that doesn't work, so it's just bring all the knowledge forth, see what is the best option, and everyone could be different, and then say, well, we do see this subset, so make sure that they're okay as well.
Yep.
It's just all about empowering others.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely be keeping up with your social networks and Twitter and Facebook, and I'll keep up with your work, because I think it's awesome. And hopefully in the future I'll have you back on, and we'll do some more chatting on I guess the future of food, because things are always changing with marketing and going green and then going gluten free and all this stuff. So it's always you kind of have to keep up with what they're trying to sell you and how they're trying to sell you it to kind of stay informed and not be tricked into buying something that really isn't healthy.
Yeah, we could even do one on babies.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And I am a little bit more scared of having one after talking to you, after all the things I have to think about. But yeah, these are really important things, and these are things that obviously there's a lot of other things that go into having a child, but I mean, these are some things that sometimes get overlooked. Not overlooked, but I think we just take a doctor's word for it, and we don't really do our own research. So I think it's important to have people like you who are saying, do your own research and look into this and look into that and ask questions. And I know that, when you have a PhD, some doctors feel like you're stepping on their toes when you're questioning, their authority. And that's a huge issue too. It's just, I mean, I had Dr. Gregory A. Smith on, who did the movie American Addict, all about big pharma and all this stuff, and just the revolving door of Pfizer and FDA and all this stuff. And he's even said that, just this idea of like, doctors just, they get taught this one thing and that's it. And it's like their way or the highway. And not all of them, but there's a lot like that. And unfortunately, the ones that aren't like that are usually the ones that get blacklisted, like you said. So it's important to have people like you and who do spread disinformation and make us more aware. Because just talking about some of the stuff that's in our food, I think will probably scare some listeners into, when you talk about bugs and stuff like that and pink slime, just get people to be like, well, what am I eating? Maybe I should look into this. So hopefully we do impact some listeners into changing their diet a little bit. That
would be great. That's the whole goal.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
I'm excited. Hey. Love to talk again with you.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. I really appreciate your time, and keep in touch.
Okay. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
Okay. Bye.
Believe in the ripple effect.